Peace be upon you and welcome to another episode of Books and Coffee. If you're new here, I'm your host Fadila. If you've not grabbed your mug of coffee, do so right away and snuggle into a comfortable position. If you've not followed our show, do so to click on that follow button and subscribe. Also rate our show with that star. As the title indicates, today I'll be talking about mindful reading because obviously this podcast is about books and I decided that why not include mindfulness in it, because if we don't read mindfully, how would we even gain anything from the books we're actually reading? Hopefully this episode is one that you stay throughout, but if you don't stay throughout the episode, it's totally fine. You can always come back. And without further ado, let's get right into this episode. So I will be sharing my experience of mindfulness with you guys and also sharing tips on how to read mindfully and purposeful and all. Let's begin with the definition of what mindful reading is. So basically, mindful reading it's like a purposeful and present-minded approach to engaging with literature or the books you're reading, be it school books or probably novels, being in the moment, being present. Mindfulness in general, that's what it means. Being aware of what's happening, being aware of each letters, each sentence, each punctuation, each dialogue being spoken about in this book that we are actually reading. But a lot of us, we don't actually read mindfully. We basically just skim or scan through these books we read. If we ask ourselves that, okay, we are done reading this book, what did so and so say exactly in this part of the book? We might not be able to give back exactly or those exact words that character or the narrator said in that aspect of the book or in that part of the book. Why? Because we were not reading mindfully. I'm also guilty of this. A lot of you might be able to relate to what I'm saying, of course, because a lot of us don't read mindfully. I decided that I want to achieve more goals, to engage in mindfulness activities more and more and more. Mindful reading is actually one of these amazing ways that I can engage with mindfulness. I hope we both go on this journey of mindful reading together, even if it's just one person that starts mindfully reading or that engages in this activity of mindful reading. This episode would be worth recording. A lot of people might be wondering, what's the purpose of mindful reading? Is mindful reading even going to get me money or stuff like that? Mindful reading doesn't necessarily need to get you money. It could actually, but there are different ways in which mindful reading could actually enhance your overall reading experience. It will make you develop a sense of empathy, more understanding, more resilience. It will make your mind attentive. It will encourage you to have a deeper understanding of whatever you're reading. It creates a pathway in your brain. We'll talk about this further into the episode. And if you consistently do mindful reading, that pathway keeps getting broader and broader till it's something that becomes a habit. Those are a handful of the lot of benefits of mindful reading. There's a difference between reading and reading. You can tell me you are reading, but you're actually not reading. Like they say, there's a difference between hearing and listening. Two different things entirely. You could be hearing, but you could not be listening. You could be listening, but you must be hearing, obviously, to listen. You could be reading and you might be thinking you're reading, but you're not actually reading. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. And you remember how I said that mindful reading or practicing mindfulness could actually create a pathway in your brain? Things we do on a daily basis. What it does is that it rewires our brain. So now, if you're practicing mindful reading, it rewires your brain in such a way that your brain takes note of this change and adapts to it, because our brain is constantly changing. Neuroplasticity in layman language means the rewiring of our brains. The more you practice something, the more your brain creates new connections between the neurons. To make it simpler, in simple terms, let's say now we have a field with grasses, and then there's a particular path that people always pass to get to the end of that field. And over years and decades and centuries, people have been passing that particular path to go there. What do you think would happen to that path? That path becomes clearer. Less grasses would be seen there because this path is used often. This is the same logic for mindful reading. If you keep reading mindfully, it's going to be like that path that people keep, stepping on, and it keeps becoming clearer. And another thing about our brain is the more you do something, the more it strengthens these new connections between the neurons, and the more it strengthens the existing one. The opposite is the case. The less you use it, the more and faster it destroys this path. It says, okay, this person is not using this, so probably maybe to them it's worthless or it's not what using, let's say for example, you are a type of person that used to run, you are a very athletic person back in your secondary school days, and then throughout an entire decade you didn't do running or anything. If you are to come back to running, you wouldn't be as good as you were 10 years ago, because that connection would have probably been destroyed or in the process of being destroyed, because your brain is like, okay, I don't think he needs this path for running anymore, so let's destroy it and create space for new connections that he is going to bring into us. It's basically a case of you use it or you lose it. So now that we've established what mindful reading is and the benefits we could get out of actually practicing this skill, now let's move on to how to actually practice mindful reading. The first thing I would say is to create a mindful reading environment, a mindful reading space. Like for example, if you want to be productive, if you've heard from probably maybe a lot of productivity experts or productivity coaches, you have to have your space clean or clutter-free to be able to be productive. So same goes for mindful reading. The place you are going to be practicing your mindful reading in, or maybe it could be your reading nook, it should be clutter-free. It should be a nice and welcoming kind of environment. If you're kind of person that enjoys a cup of coffee like me, or if you enjoy tea, you could actually incorporate that into your reading space. It should just be something that when you see, it makes you want to be productive. It makes you want to actually achieve that goal you want to achieve or you are working towards, which is obviously mindful reading in this aspect. It could even be like you light up candles like I love doing and just set that mood and atmosphere. Next, we move on to the selection of the books you are going to read. While choosing your book, you choose it mindfully. It might sound like, what is this girl saying? It actually helps. You should be mindful, like, take the colors into consideration, being in the present moment, not like you're searching through your bookshelf and you're thinking of what am I going to cook for dinner today, or stuff like that. You should be mindfully choosing these books and selecting them. You should be doing them intentionally to have the optimal or the most amazing mindful reading experience. Before you choose or you settle on like a specific genre or a specific theme, I encourage that you have thoughtful contemplations. I don't mean like you should just come and start making your mind like a fuzzy kind of place. Should I read non-fiction or fiction today? Should I read this book that talks about friendship and relationship, or should I read this book that talks about identity, being in the moment while you actually choose and select these books? And then another one, because obviously I cannot leave this place without talking about this, the ritual of brewing coffee. I won't call it brewing necessarily. I don't brew coffee, but it would be nice to actually do so. I was watching Ali Abdal's video. He's a productivity expert and his videos are amazing and top notch. In one of his videos, there was this making of coffee technique that I hope to try out. I think it's called the filter something method. Basically, it's more like a science experiment. Just imagine this method as a science experiment kind of thing. So basically, he takes a filter paper, obviously not the filter paper used in the lab, and then he puts it into like a container and then pour his coffee powder or his grounded coffee and then adds hot water and then it filters it. And then you have your coffee. Very easy. While you are brewing your coffee, let's say you've gotten your space ready and you need to grab your cup of coffee or your mug of coffee. While you're brewing it, you should be in the moment as the sound of the water is being poured into the coffee, or maybe you're using a coffee brewing machine. That sound while the coffee is dropping bit by bit into the cup. The aroma of the coffee is filling the atmosphere. Savor every single feeling, absorb it, the warmth. All this would actually enhance your reading experiences. I think it was in mid-2023 I attended a mindfulness course, which literally changed my life. It was so amazing attending it. Like, I knew what mindfulness was, but like I swept it under the carpet. But I actually attended this course and it blew my mind. I was like, wow, where have I been all these years? A lot of things were being covered there, from breathing exercises, self-love, self-compassion, mindful eating, mindful walking, mindful reading. It was such an amazing training and experience for me. Honestly, my favorite exercise is the mindful breathing exercise. We also talked about different ways of expressing our emotions, process your thought process, how you react. It was just such an amazing experience, and there's going to be an upcoming training, the next cohort for the mindfulness training for adults. For interested listeners, if you want to know more, you could simply just click the link that I'm going to leave in the show notes to get more details. But yeah, side note is, while you're doing this mindfulness exercise, you have to also enjoy it. I don't mean like you should just be serious and just be poof. mindfulness. I'm mindfully reading. I'm not supposed to smile on. You need to enjoy. That's the essence of the mindful reading. To enjoy and feel and understand every single sentence, word, letter, every intricate meaning, reading between the lines, as they say, reading between the lines. I'm going to be dropping a little bit of things that I've learned from Ali Abdul. There was something he said about being productive, and I feel mindful reading also falls in the line of being productive. He said that it's basically us using our time in a way that is effective, intentional, and enjoyable. And I basically feel like mindful reading goes in line with this definition. You have to be intentional while you're doing mindful reading. You have to be present. Here are the mindfulness technique that you could include into your mindful reading routine. So number one on our list, like we've already mentioned, is to create a distraction-free environment so that it can boost your ability to concentrate. And then secondly, you should have clear intention that I am going to read mindfully. Obviously, there'll be times where you would lose track of being mindful, but the important thing is basically bringing your mind back to being mindful. Before you start reading, you set like clear goals that you want to achieve from this reading. Okay, I want to read 1 page today or 3 pages. There should basically just be a sense of relaxation. You just start reading mindfully. And honestly, when you're mindfully reading something, you'd see a huge difference. Trust me, try it. I want you to reflect on your own mindful reading experiences. If you've, in one way or the other, before listening to this episode, if you've engaged in mindful reading or you've encountered someone that has engaged in it, let us know in the comments below. How do you practice reading mindfully? Make sure to share them in the comments below. If you are interested in mindfulness course or you want to join the next cohort, you could simply just go to the link and get all the details on the mindfulness course. Thank you all for listening. Jazakumullahu khairan. If you've still not followed, make sure to smash that follow button. Rate our show, share our show with your family and friends. Also follow us on YouTube through the link in the show notes. And as always, Assalamu alaikum